The courier walked into my skincare studio asking for the owner of my company. The problem was, he was not asking for me. 3 hours earlier, I had caught my husband sleeping with my employee in my own bed. I thought that was the worst thing he could do to me. I was wrong. My name is Mary Reno, 33 years old, Black American, founder of Reno Skin Beauty, an independent skincare brand I built in Seoul from a rented studio apartment, a formulation notebook, and 4 years of refusing to quit every time somebody politely suggested I should. My husband's name is Cha Miho, 36, Korean, corporate finance consultant, calm voice, sharp suits, the kind of man people trusted quickly because he always sounded composed even when everybody else in the room was panicking. The other woman's name was Oh Chiron, 27, brand coordinator at Reno Skin, beautiful, smart, soft-spoken, unemployed when Miho introduced her to me 14 months earlier and suggested she might be useful for community outreach and marketing strategy. I hired her myself. That detail matters, because every terrible thing that happened afterward entered my life through doors I personally opened. And maybe the cruelest part of all this is that if you had met us 6 months earlier, you would have called us a success story. Not perfect. Real. There's a difference. If you are new here, this is Soul and Soul Stories, where we tell stories that feel too personal to be fiction. Subscribe and drop your city in the comments before we continue because this one gets heavier every minute. Let me explain how everything collapsed in a single day. Reno Skin started in my kitchen. Literally. 1 hot plate, 3 glass beakers, secondhand mixing equipment, and a notebook filled with formulations specifically designed for women with melanin-rich skin living in dry East Asian climates. That niche barely existed when I arrived in Korea. Most brands were not formulating for us. Not intentionally. Not seriously. And definitely not from someone who looked like me. I heard every version of doubt possible. Too foreign. Too niche. Too ambitious. Too black. Too American. Too expensive. Too difficult. Too unrealistic. I built Reno Skin anyway. Slowly. Painfully. Beautifully. The first person who truly believed in it besides me was Sola. Nigerian Korean. 29. Smart enough to run 3 companies but loyal enough to help me build one. Back then she was just a customer. Now she was my operations manager and closest friend in Seoul. Sola used to joke that Reno Skin was not a beauty brand. It's revenge in moisturizer form. And honestly, she was not entirely wrong. Because every successful launch felt like surviving something. Then Miho entered my life during year 1. At first he really was wonderful. I need to say that honestly because the audience always expects there to be obvious signs from the beginning. There weren't. That man loved me once. Or at least I believe he did. He helped me package orders at 2 in the morning, held shipping tape between his teeth while sealing boxes, stayed awake during launch nights calculating inventory projections beside me. When investors spoke to him instead of me at meetings, he redirected the conversation immediately. No, he would say calmly. Ask Mary. She built the formulations. I loved him for that. God, I really loved him for that. We married 18 months later. Small wedding. Warm lights. My mother crying through the entire ceremony. Sola drunk enough to threaten anybody who ever hurt me. And Miho looking at me like I was the greatest thing he had ever touched. That memory became difficult later. Because betrayal feels worse when the love once looked real. Then I got pregnant. And slowly, something shifted. Not immediately. Not dramatically. Like pressure changing inside a room. Small things first. He worked later. Came home quieter. Touched me less. At first I blamed pregnancy exhaustion. Then motherhood. Then stress. Then myself. Especially myself. After our son Jaiwan was born, my body changed in all the ways bodies honestly do after carrying life. I was softer. More tired. Healing. And at first Miho still tried. He kissed my forehead. Brought soup. Held the baby during investor calls. Told me I was beautiful. But somewhere after month 4, intimacy began disappearing from our marriage piece by piece. Excuses multiplied. He was tired. Overworked. Financially stressed. Distracted. The baby cried too much. The studio needed him. Clients needed him. Life needed him. Everything needed him except me. And eventually something dangerous started happening inside my head. I began missing my own husband while living in the same apartment with him. You can survive a lot of things. Loneliness beside someone who used to adore you is harder. One night I even asked him directly, "Are you still attracted to me?" He looked genuinely surprised. Of course. But he did not touch me afterward. That answer sat inside me for months. Because women know. We always know when affection becomes performance instead of hunger. Still, I trusted him. That was my mistake. The morning everything collapsed started normally. Too normally. That still disturbs me. Miho left early saying he had an important investor meeting in Gangnam. Chiron messaged the staff group chat saying she was sick and would not make it into work. I spent the morning at Reno Skin reviewing supplier samples, while Jaiwon stayed with my mother-in-law. At 11:23, Sola reminded me the signed distributor contracts for Busan were still sitting on my desk at home. We needed them by noon. Our apartment was in Seongsu. The studio was in Mapo, 20 minutes apart without traffic. I told Sola I'd grab them quickly and come back. That decision changed my life. The apartment building lobby was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. I remember that specifically. No television noise from the concierge desk. No cleaning carts. Nothing. Just elevator music and my own footsteps. I went upstairs, unlocked the apartment, and immediately smelled Miho's cologne. That surprised me, because supposedly he was in Gangnam. I stood there confused for maybe 3 seconds before hearing something upstairs. A laugh. Female. Soft. Then another sound. Lower. Male. And suddenly my entire body knew before my brain allowed itself to understand. No. No, no, no. Not him. Not here. Not like this. I moved upstairs slowly. I still remember gripping the staircase rail, so tightly my fingers hurt afterward. The bedroom door was partially open, and through that opening, I saw my husband. Not tired. Not stressed. Not emotionally distant. Alive. Hungry. Aggressive almost. Touching another woman with a level of desire I had not seen from him since before our son was born. Chiron was underneath him. In my bed. My husband's hand wrapped in her hair while she laughed breathlessly and whispered, "You're insane." And Miho, my husband, smiled against her throat and said, "You have no idea what I've risked for you." I stopped breathing. Not metaphorically. Actually. Because something about seeing him like that destroyed reality, so completely my body forgot basic function for a second. The worst part was not even the cheating. It was realizing immediately that he had lied to me for months. This man was not incapable of desire. He had simply stopped giving it to me. And standing there watching him touch another woman, like he was starving for her, while I was still bleeding emotionally from childbirth. That humiliation almost knocked me over physically. Then Chiron said something else. Something that made everything even uglier. "When are you finally going to tell her?" Miho laughed softly. "Soon. And Reno Skin? It's basically mine already anyway. Mine. Mine. Mine." That word echoed through my skull violently. I think part of me expected guilt. Fear. Some sign this affair was reckless rather than deliberate. Instead, they looked comfortable. Practiced. Safe. Like this had happened many times before. I backed away before they noticed me. Carefully. Quietly. I walked downstairs. Picked up the distributor files with shaking hands. Then left the apartment without making a sound. I sat inside my car afterward, unable to move for almost 10 minutes. People think discovering infidelity creates immediate rage. Sometimes it does. But sometimes your mind protects itself differently. Mine became cold. Extremely cold. Like every emotion suddenly froze beneath survival instinct. I stared at the steering while trying to understand how my entire life had transformed between breakfast and noon. Then eventually I drove back to Reno Skin. And somehow, I still worked. Reviewed samples. Answered emails. Approved packaging revisions. Held meetings. Because women are terrifyingly good at functioning while dying emotionally. Around 2:15, the courier arrived. Clipboard. Brown envelope. Professional smile. "Legal delivery for Reno Skin majority owner," he said in Korean. Sola looked confused. "So give it to Mary." The courier checked the paperwork. "No," he said politely. "This delivery is for Chiron." Everything inside me stopped. Completely. Sola looked toward me slowly. The courier continued casually. "Ownership registration amendment confirmation. Signature required." The room went silent. Not normal silence. Shock silence. The kind where even breathing feels loud. I walked toward the desk slowly. "Can I see that?" The The courier hesitated briefly before showing the document header. And there it was. Ochiron, registered majority owner. Reno Skin Beauty. My vision blurred for half a second. Not from tears. From pure disbelief. Because suddenly the affair became something worse. Much worse. This was not only cheating. This was replacement. Carefully planned replacement. The courier looked uncomfortable now. Should I come back later? I stared at the paperwork. Then finally said quietly, yes. He nodded quickly and left. The second the door closed, Sola locked it. Then turned toward me slowly. What the hell was that? I looked at the empty doorway. Then at the elevator. Then finally whispered, my husband has been stealing my company. And for the first time that day, I cried. Sola did not ask questions immediately. That was one of the reasons I trusted her with my life and my business. She locked the studio door, pulled the blinds shut across the front glass, turned the closed sign around, then walked back toward me slowly while I still stood frozen beside the reception desk, holding the image of that courier envelope inside my head. Ochiron, registered majority owner. Reno Skin Beauty. I could still see the words, still hear them, like my brain had not fully accepted they belonged to my life yet. Sola stopped in front of me. What happened? Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just direct. And somehow that made me finally break. Because calmness gives grief room to land. I sat down hard in the consultation chair and covered my mouth with my hand before the sob fully escaped. Not graceful crying. Not movie crying. The kind that hurts your ribs. Sola crouched immediately beside me. Mary. I shook my head. Mijo, I whispered. The moment I said his name out loud, everything became real. Not suspicion. Not confusion. Reality. I looked up at her. I went home for the Busan contracts. Her face changed immediately. Not because she understood yet. Because women understand tone before words. And I swallowed hard. He was there. A pause. Then, with her? I nodded once. Sola closed her eyes briefly. Then opened them again. Tell me exactly what happened. So I did. I told her about the empty lobby. The elevator ride. The sounds upstairs. The bedroom door. Mijo touching Chiron like he had never once touched me after childbirth. The way he looked alive with her. The way he laughed. The way he said Reno Skin was basically his already. That part made Sola's expression darken. Then I told her about the courier. And by the end of it she was standing perfectly still beside the consultation table with both arms folded tightly across her chest. That man planned this, she said quietly. Not. He cheated. Not. He lied. Planned. And deep down I already knew she was right. Because affairs happen in chaos. This did not feel chaotic. It felt organized. Structured. Like something slowly built behind my back while I was too exhausted trying to survive motherhood and business ownership simultaneously to notice the architecture changing around me. Sola looked toward the studio floor. Then back at me. We need legal protection before emotional reactions. I wiped my face. I know. Today. I know. Call Isul. So I did. Kwan Isul answered on the second ring. Corporate attorney. 42. Sharp enough to make wealthy men nervous. One of the few lawyers who treated Reno Skin seriously before it became profitable enough for everybody else to suddenly believe in the vision. Mary. My husband forged ownership documents transferring Reno Skin to my employee. Silence. Then. Where are you? At the studio. Do not confront either of them. I'm coming. She arrived 25 minutes later carrying 2 phones, a laptop bag, and the specific energy of a woman already preparing to dismantle someone legally. The 3 of us sat around the consultation table while I explained everything again from the beginning. This time I did not cry. That surprised me. But I think somewhere between discovering the affair and hearing another woman called the owner of my company, my grief had started transforming into something colder. More focused. Isul listened without interrupting once. Then opened the Korean business registry on her laptop. Her eyes moved quickly across the screen. Then stopped. There it is. She rotated the laptop toward me. Reno Skin Beauty. Founder. Mary Reno. Amended controlling interest. Ochiron. Filed 11 days earlier. Authorized representative. Cha Mijo. Seeing his name there physically hurt. Because it meant confidence. He had not hidden. He had not panicked. He believed this would work. Isul enlarged the filing documents. Your signature was used authorizing majority transfer. I never signed anything. I know. How? She pointed immediately. Your natural downward pressure disappears halfway through the final stroke. I blinked. What? You sign aggressively when emotionally attached to a document. This signature is cautious. Slower. Somebody copied shape without understanding rhythm. That sentence nearly destroyed me emotionally for some reason. Because she was right. My signature on Reno skin documents always carried force. Pride. Ownership. This fake version looked like somebody wearing my skin incorrectly. Sola leaned forward. How fast can we stop this? Isel checked the time. If I file emergency injunction before close of business, operational transfer can be frozen pending investigation. Do it. I already started. That almost made me laugh. Of course she had. Isel did not waste motion. For the next hour, the studio transformed into something between a legal office and a crime scene. Sola pulled employee access logs. Isel downloaded filing records. I opened previous verified signatures from distributor contracts, trademark filings, tax registrations, manufacturing approvals. Each authentic signature felt strangely emotional now. Proof I existed. Proof I built this. Proof my name had history before Miho tried rewriting it. Then Isel suddenly stopped typing. Her expression sharpened. What? She turned the laptop slowly toward us. A folder of attached correspondence linked to the restructuring filing. Internal communications. Investor summaries. Draft operational transition notes. I frowned. What is that? Isel clicked one open. And suddenly I understood something much worse than fraud had been happening. The document header read, Transitional Leadership Strategy, Reno Skin Q3. Underneath, public-facing operational leadership to gradually shift toward Ochiron, while founder Mary Reno reduces active executive involvement following maternity-related lifestyle reprioritization. My stomach dropped. I kept reading. Brand continuity messaging should emphasize collaborative restructuring rather than executive withdrawal. Another line. Founder may continue formulation involvement privately while operational visibility transitions. I stopped breathing for a second. Not because he stole ownership. Because he had already begun erasing me publicly. Slowly. Professionally. Carefully. Like I was becoming a ghost inside my own company while still physically standing inside it every day. Sola swore softly under her breath. Isel opened another document. Investor briefing draft. And there it was again. Chiron increasingly handling strategic operations as Mary Reno prioritizes motherhood and wellness balance. Motherhood. He used motherhood. The months I spent healing, bleeding, breastfeeding between meetings, sleeping 4 hours a night while still reviewing formulations. He had turned all of that into weakness inside official documents. I sat down slowly. Oh my God. Sola looked furious now. He was replacing you. Not killing. Not destroying. Replacing. That realization hurt more than the affair. Because cheating is appetite. This was erasure. I kept reading through the transition drafts while nausea crawled slowly through my chest. There were meeting schedules where Chiron had already been introduced privately to investors as future operational lead. Emails where Miho subtly minimized my involvement. Notes implying I struggled emotionally after childbirth. Suggestions that I wanted a slower lifestyle. None of it dramatic enough individually to trigger alarm. But together, it formed a narrative. A very careful one. Mary Reno, creative founder. Emotionally overwhelmed mother. Gradually stepping away. Chamiho, stable operational architect. Ochiron, fresh future leadership. I looked at the screen until the words blurred. My husband did not try to destroy me, I whispered. Sola looked at me. He tried to replace me while I was still alive. The room went completely silent. Because that was the real horror. Not one explosive betrayal. A slow disappearance. I suddenly remembered moments that had confused me over the past 6 months. Investors greeting Chiron too warmly. Distributors asking if I was taking more personal time lately. A beauty editor once casually saying, Chiron seems very hands-on now. At the time I thought, good. She's growing into leadership. Now I understood. Miho had been building her into my outline while I was too exhausted surviving postpartum life to notice pieces of myself quietly being removed. Isel closed the laptop slowly. We need to move aggressively now. I nodded once. No tears this time. Something inside me had changed. Not healed. Hardened. The affair wounded me. But this insulted my existence. At 4:13 p.m., ISIL filed emergency injunction paperwork freezing all operational transfer authority. At 4:37, Miho texted me. Investor meeting running late. Don't wait up, red heart. A heart emoji. I stared at it for several seconds. Then laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes betrayal becomes so absurd your nervous system stops knowing which emotion belongs first. I replied, inventory issue at studio. Might stay nearby tonight. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, okay, love you. I looked at the message for a very long time. Then finally placed the phone face down. Sola watched me carefully. You okay? No. Good. That made me laugh again. Then cry immediately after. Both at once. Because grief is not organized. That night I stayed in a hotel near Hongdae with Sola. I called my mother in Mississippi around midnight. I only told her enough to explain why my voice sounded different. But mothers know. Especially black mothers. They hear emotional fractures through silence itself. What happened? I closed my eyes. Miho's been stealing Reno's skin. Long silence. Then, baby. Not pity. Pain. The kind mothers feel when they cannot physically protect their children anymore. He cheated too, I whispered. Another silence. Then quietly. Do you feel safe? Yes. Good. Then listen carefully. Her voice hardened slightly. Do not protect him because you loved him. That sentence stayed with me all night. Because part of me still wanted to make excuses. Maybe pressure changed him. Maybe debt broke him. Maybe insecurity poisoned him. But none of those things forced him to slowly rewrite my existence. That part was intentional. The next morning, Reno's skin opened at 9. At 8:53, Ochiron walked inside wearing a cream coat and carrying coffee. She smiled at reception. Then saw me, Sola, ISIL, and the locked front doors. Her smile disappeared immediately. Good. Sit down, I said calmly. She looked confused. Then nervous. But she sat. I placed the restructuring documents in front of her. Did Miho tell you Reno's skin belonged to him? Her eyes widened instantly. Answer carefully. A long pause. Then quietly. Yes. I nodded once. Not because it hurt less. Because now everything finally aligned logically. What exactly did he tell you? Chiron swallowed. He said you built the products together. That he handled operations and financial structure while you focused on branding. Branding. I almost laughed. As if Reno's skin was some decorative hobby instead of 4 years of my blood. He told me after the baby, she continued carefully, you stopped wanting leadership pressure. I stared at her, then slowly pushed another document across the table. Forensic signature comparison. 17 discrepancies highlighted in red. He forged my name. Charon's face went white. No. Yes. No, he said. He lied. Silence. Then I leaned forward slightly. You thought you were inheriting a company. She looked down. You were actually helping erase the woman who built it. That finally broke her. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like somebody realizing too late they were standing inside somebody else's tragedy, wearing shoes they should never have touched. And somewhere in another part of Seoul, my husband still believed he was in control of the story. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Chiron sat across from me crying quietly into both hands while the restructuring documents remained spread across the consultation table between us like pieces of a crime scene. Not murder. Something colder. Identity theft. Because that was what Miho had really done. He had not tried to destroy Reno's skin. He had tried to slowly remove me from it while keeping the parts of me people valued. My formulations. My vision. My labor. My reputation. Just not my ownership. Not my authority. Not my name. And somehow that hurt more than the affair itself. Sola's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked up at me. He's downstairs. The room changed immediately. Chiron lifted her head sharply. Fear crossed her face again. Good. Let her feel some of what I had felt standing outside my bedroom. ISIL closed her laptop calmly. Do you want him up here? I looked toward the studio floor. At the formulation bench. At the product displays. At the community wall covered in printed customer messages from women around the world thanking Reno's Skin for creating products that finally made them feel seen. Everything in this room existed because I had built it. Not Miho. Not Chiron. Me. Yes, I said quietly. Send him up. Sola unlocked the front door remotely from the reception panel. 30 seconds later, the elevator opened. Then Miho walked into Reno's skin. Still confident. Still composed. Still believing this was a situation he could manage. That illusion lasted exactly 4 seconds. Because the moment he saw a Chiron crying, Isol seated beside me, legal documents across the table, and my face completely empty of softness. He understood. The mask slipped immediately. Not fully, but enough. "Mary," he said carefully. No answer. He looked toward Chiron. "What happened?" I laughed once. A very small laugh. "You happened." Silence. Sola locked the front door again behind him. That sound echoed through the studio harder than it should have. Miho noticed. Good. For the first time since I met him, I saw uncertainty enter his body physically. Not panic. Calculation interrupted. Isol gestured toward the chair opposite me. "Sit down, Mr. Cha." He remained standing. "I think this should be private." "No," I said calmly. "You've done enough things privately." That landed. His jaw tightened slightly. Then finally he sat. I looked at him carefully. Really looked. And suddenly I understood something painful. This was not a man who snapped overnight. This version of Miho had been growing quietly for a long time while I kept loving the older version hard enough to ignore the cracks. "I know about the affair," I said. His eyes flickered once. "I know about the forged ownership transfer." Another flicker. "I know about the restructuring documents." That one hit harder. He looked at Isol immediately. "She found them through the registry attachments," Isol said flatly. Miho leaned back slowly. And for the first time since entering the room, he stopped pretending. No denial. No fake confusion. No performance. Interesting. Because guilty people usually lie first. Miho simply looked tired. Like the effort of maintaining the architecture had finally become heavier than the lie itself. "You should have talked to me," he said quietly. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "You forged my signature." You weren't listening anymore. The room went still. I stared at him. Then very calmly asked, "What exactly was I supposed to hear?" His voice sharpened slightly now. That everything was falling apart. Whose everything? He looked away briefly. And there it was. The center of the story. Not Reno's skin. Not marriage. Not love. Him. Everything was always him. "My investments collapsed," he admitted quietly. "I know. I had creditors watching everything. I know. I was trying to stabilize things. By giving my company to your mistress?" Chiron flinched visibly. Miho closed his eyes briefly. She wasn't supposed to be temporary. That line changed the air completely. Because suddenly even Chiron looked shocked. "You told me she was unstable," Chiron whispered. Miho ignored her. His eyes stayed on me. "You stopped seeing me," he said quietly. I stared at him in disbelief. "Excuse me?" "You became bigger than the marriage." Sola physically turned away, muttering under her breath, because she genuinely could not tolerate him anymore. But I stayed very still. "Explain that sentence carefully." His voice grew stronger now. More emotional. Like resentment finally finding oxygen. Everything became Reno's skin. Interviews. Launches. Investors. Campaigns. You were always moving. Always building. Always becoming something larger. He swallowed hard. And I was just standing beside it. I looked at him for several seconds. Then quietly asked, "So your solution was to erase me from my own company? You don't understand what it feels like." "No," I said softly. "You don't understand what it feels like." Silence. I leaned forward slightly. "I built Reno's skin while pregnant." No response. "I built Reno's skin while breastfeeding." Still nothing. "I built Reno's skin sleeping 4 hours a night." His face tightened. "And while I was doing that," I continued quietly, "you were teaching another woman how to wear my life." That hit him. Finally. Because for the first time since this conversation started, Miho looked ashamed. Real shame. Not fear of consequences. Recognition. Too late. But real. Chiron looked physically sick now. Tears ran silently down her face. "You said she wanted to step back," she whispered. Miho rubbed both hands over his face. "She did." "I never said that." "You didn't have to," he snapped suddenly. "You were exhausted all the time. Crying constantly. Forgetting things. I had postpartum depression." The room went silent. Even Miho froze. Because I had never said those words out loud before. Not even to myself fully. But there it was. The truth. "I was drowning," I said quietly. "And instead of helping me, You used it to convince yourself I no longer deserved what I built. Miho looked down immediately. Good. Let him sit inside that. Isol finally spoke. The emergency injunction has already been granted. Miho's head lifted sharply. The ownership transfer is frozen pending criminal investigation. Color left his face slowly. And the restructuring documents? He asked. Evidence, Isol replied calmly. For what? Her eyes sharpened. Fraudulent corporate manipulation. Forgery. Executive misrepresentation. Financial concealment. Every word landed heavier than the last. Miho stared at her, then finally asked the only question that mattered to him now. How bad is this? Isol looked directly at him. Very. For the first time, real fear entered his face. Not emotional fear. Professional fear. The kind men like Miho understand best. His reputation. His licenses. His access. His future. Good. Because emotional pain alone would never have taught him anything. Over the next 3 weeks, everything exploded publicly. At first quietly. A legal freeze here. A registry irregularity there. Then beauty blogs picked up the story. Then Korean finance forums connected Miho's name to restructuring fraud investigations. Then leaked emails appeared online. The ones discussing founder visibility transition, maternal reprioritization, public-facing operational replacement. Women online became furious. Not because of the affair, because they recognized the pattern immediately. A woman builds something. A man slowly reframes her exhaustion as incompetence. A younger woman gets installed as the future. The internet understood this story instinctively. Reno Skin's community exploded in support. Thousands of comments. Women sharing. Stolen credit. Workplace erasure. Husbands minimizing them. Postpartum vulnerability being weaponized against them. One comment went viral. They always call women emotional after forcing them to survive impossible things. That line ended up everywhere. Meanwhile, Miho's world collapsed beautifully. His consulting firm suspended him first, then terminated him completely. Professional associations launched ethics reviews. Private clients disappeared almost overnight. Because finance people forgive many things. Forgery is not one of them. And the more investigators dug, the uglier everything became. Hidden debt, manipulated reporting, unauthorized operational filings. Chiron testified voluntarily. That shocked people. Not me. By then she finally understood. She had never been the future. She had been camouflage. A softer replacement for the founder Miho no longer wanted standing above him. During testimony she admitted. The affair. The lies Miho told. The restructuring conversations. And how he slowly painted me as emotionally unstable after childbirth. The courtroom became very quiet during that part. Especially when Chiron cried and said, I thought she was stepping away willingly. I didn't know he was taking pieces of her life without permission. Even the judge looked disgusted. The forensic signature analysis destroyed Miho completely. 17 inconsistencies. 17. I remember smiling slightly when I heard the number. Because after everything, he still could not imitate me properly. The final court hearing happened 8 months after the courier walked into Reno Skin. 8 months. That was all it took for an entire marriage to become evidence. Miho sat across the courtroom looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Energetically. Like consequences had finally stripped away the certainty he once wore like expensive cologne. The judge reviewed. Forged filings. Fraudulent restructuring. Executive deception. Unauthorized transfer attempts. And financial concealment. Then came the final question. Mr. Cha, the judge said quietly, why did you believe you had the right to remove Mary Reno from the company she founded? The courtroom went completely silent. Miho looked at me, and for the first time since I met him, he answered honestly. I thought nobody would follow her if I controlled the structure. A pause. Then quietly. I was wrong. Yes, he was. Because people can feel truth eventually. And Reno Skin carried too much of me inside it for ownership papers to erase that. The court ruled fully in my favor. Ownership restored entirely. Forgery conviction confirmed. Financial penalties issued. Professional restrictions imposed. Public judgment complete. Justice. Real justice. Not emotional revenge. Consequences. The kind that permanently alter a man's reflection when he sees himself alone afterward. 3 months later, Reno Skin hosted its relaunch event. Mapo. Same studio. Same formulation bench. Different energy. Different woman. The entire room was packed. Beauty editors. Investors. Customers. Women who supported Reno's skin before the scandal and women who found it because of the scandal. Sola stood beside me as chief operating officer, now with legal equity ownership I personally gave her. Earned honestly. Bomi photographed everything. And my son Jaiwan slept peacefully upstairs in the office nursery during the relaunch of the company his father once tried to take from me. That detail mattered deeply to me. I walked onto the stage slowly while cameras flashed, then looked at the crowd. For a moment I almost cried. Not from sadness. From survival. Because some versions of you die quietly during betrayal. And standing there that night, I realized this version of me had lived. I took the microphone. When people heard about what happened at Reno's skin, I said quietly, many assumed the hardest part was the affair. The room stayed completely silent. It wasn't. I paused. The hardest part was realizing somebody I loved slowly tried to convince the world I was no longer necessary inside something I built. You could feel the room breathing. But Reno's skin remembered me. My voice shook slightly there. Good. Let it. Because real things remember their creators. Silence. Then applause. Loud. Sudden. Emotional. I looked out across that room understanding something clearly for the first time in almost a year. Miho never understood Reno's skin. Not really. He thought ownership lived inside documents. Inside structures. Inside authority. But Reno's skin lived inside. My formulations. My vision. My labor. My voice. My story. And none of those things were transferable. The relaunch sold out in 5 hours. 5. The headline the next morning read, Mary Reno reclaims Reno's skin after corporate fraud case. I framed that article quietly inside my office later. Not because of victory. Because of evidence. Proof I came back. Tonight, Reno's skin operates internationally. Tokyo launch next year. Atlanta after that. Sola still threatens people professionally when necessary. Jaiwan is healthy and loud and obsessed with strawberries. And me? I sign every document myself now. Slowly. Carefully. Like somebody who understands exactly what a name costs. So here is what I want to leave you with. Some men do not leave loudly. They erase you gradually. One meeting at a time. One introduction at a time. One stolen piece of credit at a time. Until one day you wake up and realize somebody has been teaching the world to live without you while you were still standing there. Do not ignore that feeling. Do not explain it away. And if somebody ever tries to wear your life like it belongs to them, make sure the foundation remembers your name before the paperwork does. This is Soul and Soul Stories. Subscribe if you are not already here. Drop your city in the comments and tell me where in the world this story found you. My husband forged my signature to give my company to his mistress. But in the end, the court returned the paperwork. The people returned the truth. And Reno's skin remembered exactly who built it first.